From the Center for Distributed Learning at the University of Central Florida, I'm Kelvin Thompson.
And I'm Tom Kavanaugh.
And you are listening to Topcast, the Teaching Online podcast.
Hey, Kelvin.
Hey, Tom.
How's it going?
It's going just splendidly.
Splendidly. Good. All right. So we've got a topic we're going to talk about today, which is research in online learning. But as always, the first question that we have to cover is...
Burning question.
The burning question. Let's hope it's not burning. is what's in the thermos?
What's in the thermos? Well,
so again, in case we have some new listeners...
Because what in the world are we talking about thermoses for?
It's
a kidney.
A new listener.
That's right.
We've added two.
And if we don't, hey, would you just stop, just pause for a second and see if you can go find somebody to join you for this. Because we'd like another listener. There'll be two of you.
So you may not know that Kelvin is something of a coffee aficionado.
Ooh, that's fancy.
Yeah, which we've also described as a snob.
That's right.
Coffee snob. So
that's right.
That all means Kelvin has his own coffee sommelier who helps choose his coffee to properly match everything else. But he knows a thing or two about coffee. So that has become part of our podcast.
It's part of our shtick. What do you want?
Yeah, it's our shtick.
It's our thing here.
It makes you human instead of the robot that you are.
That's right. I have fooled them all into thinking I am a human by talking about coffee. So this is interesting. This is a Brazilian coffee, and I don't know about pronouncing Portuguese, but I would say this Brazilian coffee is called Da Terra Via Borghese. So Da Terra is a big privately owned coffee estate in Brazil. So it's not like it's this mom and pop with the three kids. They have a small, it's a big old thing. Da Terra, and it's divided into 88 little mini farms specializing in certain coffee varieties, and this is one of them, this Via Borghese. I guess it's named after this place in Rome, which is kind of interesting.
It sounds Italian.
It does, right. But I kind of like it. What do you think?
Yes. My coffee palate isn't quite as refined as yours, but I think it's what did you say? A splendid coffee.
Splendid. Yeah. That's right. I will, I don't know, I should confess this, but I'll confess that like the whole thing with it's like burnt walnut and it's, all that. I look for that stuff sometimes, and every once in a while I can find it, but my palate's not that educated either.
Hints of vanilla.
Exactly. We could make up stuff, but
yeah. It's got a good finish.
Yes, right. I had oysters in the West Coast once, and I was reading the menu. It said these oysters, maybe Prince Edward Island or something, with a watermelon finish.
Really?
Yeah. And then I'm ordering those, and you know what? I'm like, all right, slimy oyster. And you pause for a second. My gosh, it tastes like watermelons. So this coffee doesn't have a watermelon finish, but the oysters did.
But we digress.
Right. So this is a great coffee for today's conversation because of this big coffee provider's emphasis on research into botany, farming methods, all kinds of stuff to develop new coffee varieties and hopefully to improve the entire coffee process, we might say, from crop to cup.
Crop to cup.
Yeah, that's somebody else's tagline, but I like it.
So what you're saying is that this coffee is data-driven.
Mm-hmm. Data-driven coffee.
Data-driven coffee. Nothing whets your appetite more than data-driven beverage.
They're all going to think I'm a robot now.
Okay, well that does make sense because today we're talking about research, educational research in the space of online learning specifically.
That's right.
So, maybe I'll start with at least the most recent, when we're recording this, the most recent Babson survey. Mm-hmm. And the meta-narrative that seems to be coming out of that particular research study seems to be, hey, look, demand and growth of online learning seems to be plateauing. Yes.
Don't tell my wife.
We don't see these gigantic year-over-year gains like we have. Now, there was a gain, and there have been gains in people's perception, chief academic officers and others saying that it's strategic or that the outcomes are better than or equal to and all of that. But the narrative the headlines seem to be, oh gosh, well, maybe we're kind of reaching saturation point with online learning. But if you actually look at the data, And that's why, don't believe every headline you read in the media. If you actually look at the data, I think there's a different story that's going on there. It's that, yes, maybe overall the growth is starting to slow a little, but it's a result of a decline in the for-profit sector. So the for-profit institutions are seeing a decrease, and that's because of a lot of things having nothing to do with online learning. They're under a lot of scrutiny, and some of their practices have been questioned, but Congress has sort of been after them. Corinthian colleges just closed. So there's a lot of pressure on the for-profit sector, and they did a high proportion of online learning. But the fact that they have seen such dramatic declines, yet the overall space has grown, says that there's a lot of growth in the public sector, particularly in four-year institutions. And I think that message in many ways has gotten lost in the overall conversation about it.
Right, yeah, because we talk in headlines and so forth. And I think another thing from an article I think you sent me that was kind of an analysis, Michael Horn, he of Clayton Christensen Institute fame, and blended learning reports and all that, wrote in Forbes and made another little comment that framing the slowing of online as just if you just looking at that as a distance thing, then you miss all of the blended stuff.
Yeah.
And so we've talked before about that here, even in these episodes of it's all about kind of your framing and your definitions and that drives a lot. That's sort of destiny, right? So it really is what are we talking about and what's your individual takeaway. It's all about context, I suppose, in a sense. I know for me, coming into today's episode, I thought about the fact that research in this space happens in different scopes, I guess, right? There are these things like the Babson survey that are kind of online research writ large, right? The really big national or international or whatever thing, whether that's survey-based or whether it's some other amalgamation of other data sources. There's institutional stuff,
right? So
your own institutional context, what's happening there. But then I think there's lots of just little small cases, lots of little, here's a few courses or a particular program or even one course. Boy, in the old days, we'd see a lot of that little, here's my one course, here's what I did in my course.
Well, you still see that. And it still drives me a little bit crazy when I look at the front page of the Chronicle or Inside Higher Ed and you see an article that says, new distance learning study says that students don't do as well or whatever it might be. And if you actually read it, it's okay, so I compared my face-to-face class to my online class. It's like, well, kind of been there, done that, and I'm not sure that's predictive of the entire, modalities performance across the entire higher education spectrum.
Yeah, is this shamelessly self-serving? In preparation for this, I actually dug out an old grad school annotated bibliography that I wrote, something like 16 years ago.
Nothing like relevant research here, Kelvin.
That's right. But here's a little excerpt. This is what I wrote like 16 years ago.
Okay, let's hear what the young Kelvin had to say.
That's right. Yeah, it'd be pretentious, like the old Kelvin. It's pretty much the same kind of thing. Have you seen my coffee? While periodicals are replete, that tells you what you're in for.
Yeah.
While periodicals are replete with opinions and editorials of the see what I did variety, there is little in the way of scholarly research on these issues. The studies that have been written often produce findings that are not widely generalizable. Perhaps it is because the nature of the online environment, online's hyphenated by the way, of the online environment involves rapid technological change, but even papers dated only 4 years ago may detail studies that are no longer relevant. Of these studies, most identify themselves as, quote, qualitative, unquote, although many of these are spurious, veiling anecdotes in the language of research. Now, before somebody throws something at me, I'm not the anti-qualitative guy, right? I'm dig qualitative research. It's just that in this particular case, the studies I looked at kind of called themselves qualitative and kind of hid behind that. But I think in many regards we're beyond this.
Yeah, a lot's happened in the last 16 years.
Yeah, how about that? But you do see glimpses, right? Just like you said, I studied my face-to-face and my online.
It still surprises me when they make headlines like that. I guess it depends on who's doing it. If it's somebody at a a well-known prestigious school, I won't mention any names.
Okay.
I have friends everywhere, right?
That's right. That's right.
But actually, the ones
we
I'm
like
thinking,
Harvard.
Yeah, I do. But they those kinds of studies, I kind of thought we were past those by now. And the ones that tend to have more impact are the ones like the SRI study, the meta-analysis that was done a few years ago. And even that, I mean...
so that's the Department of Education.
The Department of Education, right.
Evidence-based
and it found basically, it's been highly, I guess it's, of course it's more nuanced than this, but it's been highly quoted that online performs slightly better than face-to-face, and blended outperforms either one of those two. And it's based on a meta-study of other studies like the ones that we're kind of complaining about. So, take it for what it's worth. I appreciate SRI and Barbara Means and company doing the work because it hadn't been done really at that level before. But I think that there's a lot more work to be done. Despite the volume of research that has been done on online learning, there still seems to be an awful lot of confusion. In prior podcasts, we talked about defining online learning, and I think that's part of the problem. So when you said earlier that the Babson study doesn't necessarily reflect, at least in the headlines, the volume of work being done in blended learning.
Yeah, right.
Well, maybe not everybody's defining blended learning the same way.
Sure.
And so how do you capture that in a large research study? Another one that sort of strikes me as interesting is there's been a lot of press from a couple years ago, I believe, that Columbia Teachers College, the Community College Institute there, did looked at some community colleges in Washington, the state of Washington, and basically found that the students who were online did poorly compared to face-to-face students. And that, it's a reputable group of folks, and they know what they're doing. But it's one that I personally haven't had a chance to kind of dig into more to see if, what other factors. Could it be the population more than the modality? Could the people taking online classes at a community college be selecting them because they have life challenges that mean that they're drawn more to online courses? I think that there are other factors that influence some of these results more so than the modality. Not that I discount the value of the research.
Well, sure, you don't want to ever be the, don't confuse me with the facts guy. Right? You don't want to be that guy. But at the same time, if you've been around and you kind of know kind of the lay of the land, at least in kind of a broad context, and then you hear something like that, you go, well, what's going on there? Something's different. So let me find out what that.
And it may be that
is.
Those students, legitimately haven't been given the study skills or the whatever they need to be successful in an online class. It might be the modality, but I think to just kind of paint it with a broad brush is as dangerous as saying online learning is good.
Yeah, that's right. But it is. It's job security for me.
Security,
I can buy more coffee. Now, okay, let's talk about UCF for a second, right? So I guess, not to toot our own horns, but UCF was one of the first institutions that I'm aware of that was really digging in and studying its own online learning efforts from the early days, right? So we've got, at this point, darn close to 20 years of data on what's been going on here, trend data and so forth, and individual more formal research things and all that. And
it's been a true longitudinal study. We've been looking at the same measures over a long period of time.
And it's great. I mean, Chuck Jubin, Patsy Moskal, this rides on their backs, our colleagues here at UCF. And I know Chuck is used to saying, okay, so here's a slide with some kind of bar chart or something on it, and you can see the years across the bottom, but he's prone to say, pick any 5-year slice during the past 19 years, and you're going to see something that looks pretty much like that.
Yeah.
And so that's fascinating, right? Yeah.
And interestingly, if we're just talking about, say, grades or student success as measured by grades, what we found mirrors what the SRI study found, and that's been really interesting as well. And it was nice that they validated our results.
That's right. But to hit a couple of those, I think we both, if we go out and you do talk somewhere, and I will punctuate I was at another university recently talking more about kind of just teaching with technology in a broad sense, but as a case in point, I shared some of this, and this was at an institution where they weren't doing a whole lot of teaching with technology, let alone online and blended, and they were head scratching a little bit because I shared things like that historically at UCF that we do see higher success rates than get reported nationally, right?
Yeah.
Or in over time, that face-to-face and online are neck and neck with blended doing better. Withdrawal rates, we're not talking double digits, we're talking single digits, and face-to-face, online, and blended are all kind of neck and neck with blended being
blended withdrawal
better.
rates are basically 1% better, and online is 1% worse than face-to-face, in general.
And we're talking about if I remember right, usually we're talking everything 3, 4, 5%
Yes.
or something like that.
Exactly that, yeah.
And so, we're not talking 10%, we're not talking 20% or
Right.
whatever. And so that's fascinating. The fact that faculty who teach online and blended at UCF, the only thing that really correlates with their satisfaction is the amount and quality of interaction that they have with students. The better their interaction, the more they're liking this online thing, and that they say, on the whole, that the quantity and the quality of interaction with students in online and blended courses is better than in comparable face-to-face. That's been something, those things have been all along the way. So when I was sharing that recently, the inevitable thing is, why do you think that is? Because that's not what I hear.
Yeah, I get the same question when I make this presentation. So what did you say?
I said, well, it's a great question. It's a great question. You're smart. You're a smart audience here. You're above average and
good looking.
That's right.
Yeah.
All that stuff. No, I did say that. I said it's a good question, and I said, if I had to say, I don't know, but I can speculate. I think that we could argue correlation between the fact that we have a very robust faculty development program and a huge support infrastructure. We support the heck out of our faculty and students here.
We try. Yes.
And I think that pays off. If I had to speculate, that's what
I say the exact same thing.
How about that?
Yeah, and so if you look at at whatever cases when somebody says, "Oh gosh, we have 19% withdrawal rates in our online courses, or our students fail at this percent," and that's not been our experience here. I would want to dig deeper into what kind of institutional commitment there is to supporting the faculty and students who are experiencing those kinds of. Now, it may be that they're throwing everything they can at it, and it's just a challenging, socioeconomic, demographic, or whatever the case might be. I imagine, though, that other schools that have the resources to support their faculty and students like we do see similar results. That would be my contention. I don't know. It would be an interesting thing to look at. So just saying, gosh, students in online courses fail at a higher rate or withdraw at a higher rate, there's way more to that story than
the headline.
Than the headline, yeah.
That's right. And maybe to this point, we haven't reached the bottom of the well. Whether online growth is slowing or not, I think we've teased that out. Maybe it's not. You got to dig deeper. You got to turn the page. What's the metaphor now? I guess go to the second page of Google search results. Turn the page of the newspaper.
Get beyond the bought ad results.
That's right. Get past the headline. Get into the meat of it. It's like what's NPR say? As long as I'm name dropping, what's NPR say? It's they had a thing years ago about it's more. It's beyond the headlines. It's like more in-depth analysis and so forth. You got to get that. We haven't reached the bottom of the barrel in terms of what we know about online or blended learning.
Well, or for that matter, educational practice in general.
Yes, right. We haven't figured all this out.
Right.
There's some things we think we know. But you know what I'm excited about? I'm kind of excited about this whole initiative at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, this national research center that they're standing up for distance education and technology and all that stuff. Diane Reddy, Tanya Justin, our colleagues there.
Laura Pedrick.
Yes. And just as long for name dropping, we'll put them all in there. Anybody else we can mention?
Everybody heard your own name.
That's right.
You get a little adrenaline shot when you hear your own name in a podcast.
That's exactly right. Maybe I don't know about this one, but other podcasts.
You may be appalled. You may be
no,
horrified.
Please don't mention my name.
Stop talking about it.
But they've got this great initiative, this grant-funded initiative. They have a FIPSI grant to really go bigger and broader, tie all these research findings together, have a call for proposals and have research projects and really try to compile in a bigger, broader way than we've done what we know about this whole interconnected thing of online, blended, technology-enhanced learning. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I think it's great, and they know what they're doing when it comes to online and blended learning. They do a great job, and I love how inclusive they've been in trying to get various perspectives from colleagues all around the country.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with that, you should Google it. It's they call it DETA. I tried to argue that it's DETA. I said, if it were me, I'd probably try to pronounce that data somehow.
Okay.
Nobody went for that, though.
You keep calling it what you want.
I will, but they go with DETA, D-E-T-A. So you should Google that and go past the top results. But I guess the cup's getting, the bottom of the well in research isn't getting empty, but my cup is getting a little bit empty.
Yeah, mine too. That was good.
So I guess, is this what we're saying here, that we need to continue to conduct research into online and blended and technology-enhanced education? We got to be talking about it, not just doing it, so that right? And then we got to be finding key findings that can inform. Did I just say find findings? I think I did. You got to identify key findings on which to base our practice in all kinds of ways: course design, faculty development, policy. Dare we say policy?
Yeah, gosh, we didn't even talk about that. Maybe that's another podcast. But as we said earlier, data-driven decisions across all aspects of online learning, whether it's practice or policy or assessment or whatever the case might be. We're not doing this by feel or intuition, and reasonable researchers will find varying results. And are they replicable, and can we learn from it? And most importantly, as you said, kind of just keep the discourse going.
Yeah. And so we hope you'll keep the discourse going. Let us know what you think. Interact with your colleagues. Talk about this podcast, and give us your favorite findings. Maybe we'd love to hear from you. But until next time, for Topcast, I'm Kelvin Thompson.
I'm Tom Cavanaugh.
See ya.